David, the first question I have, I'm not sure that how we sort of figure this out. What are you looking for tonight as opposed to, expecting? What are you looking for? What's going to be a signal to you that something is going on?
I'm definitely going to be looking at turnout. When you look at federal elections, and it's not 100% sure rule, but you obviously we start with the Atlantic provinces, and we get a sense very quickly about turnout. One, and two, the sense of where the vote is going. And for example, if you look at how the polls were behaving before this epic turnaround earlier this year, the Conservatives were looking very good at the Atlantic provinces and even here in Quebec. And so what I'm looking at is a sense of turnout, because if too many Liberals feel that it's in the bag, they may feel, I'm just going to stay home. And that happens. So the turnout operation today is very important. That's why I think he hit record numbers during the Easter weekend, is because I think there were a lot of very important turnout operations, both on the Liberal and the Conservative side. But in Quebec also, what I'll be looking at as bellwethers is a riding like Gaspésie-les-Îles, which is currently held by a former Trudeau cabinet minister, Diane Leboutillier. If the Liberals hold that riding, that's a signal to me. Also, the Quebec City region. The Liberals have 2 seats there, but they seem to be threatening beyond. And so, again, turnout is going to be key. But you have those types of bellwether ridings. Another one that I'll be looking at is Trois-Rivières. Trois-Rivières, Aaron, the Liberals have not won that seat since the 1980 election. Pierre Elliott Trudeau. It was the great comeback election of February 1980. So to see that right now it's a very close 3-way race between the Bloc, who is currently holding that seat, a former Trois-Rivières mayor who is trying now, I think, for the 3rd or 4th time to get elected as a Conservative, and now this relatively unknown Liberal that seems to be now very competitive. That's also going to be the sign. So we're going to get early returns over there. But the other, obviously, I know that polls seems to be tightening up and the Liberal lead seems to be eroding a bit. But and this is going to be my last point. 2 things that I'm going to be looking at tonight is Ontario, and if again the GTA is going to stay Liberal. Ridings like Toronto St. Paul, you're going to get a sense. Remember, Toronto St. Paul and La Salle-Verdun were those great upsets that showed last year that the Trudeau Liberals were done. So if those 2 ridings, depending on the turnout, and if those 2 ridings go back to the Liberals, this could be a very long night for the Conservatives.
So you mentioned some of those key ridings. Let's talk about leaders, though, right? There had been a story last week, Pierre Poilievre, might he lose his riding? That seems to have subsided to some degree. Yves-François Blanchet as well. What's the update on that as far as you know?
Well, again, we don't, I mean, there's nothing that says, I mean, you start hearing those things. First of all, specific polling on ridings, you have to take that on with a huge grain of salt. And again, those 2 stories, both for Blanchet's riding and Poilievre's riding, where these stories basically we're taking a picture of the Liberal wave, say before Easter, and that was the height of the Liberal wave. The Trump effect has subsided a bit when you look at the polling, when you look at the seat projections. You're not seeing as strong a Liberal vote. And again, if a lot of Liberals stay home because they don't think that that their vote is important. And if, for example, the NDP vote that has almost completely gone to the Liberals, if some of those NDP voters say, oh, well, I'm fairly confident that Poilievre is going to be stopped, I can go back home to the NDP. That also helps both to a certain extent Pierre Poilievre and Yves-François Blanchet. So it's going to be interesting to see that, but I don't think those two are actually in jeopardy. They would be if we were looking at polling these last few days that looked like what polling looked, say, 2 weeks, 10 days ago. But right now, because again, the Bloc vote has stopped the hemorrhaging. The Conservative vote has stopped the hemorrhaging as well, and you can bet the farm that both the Bloc and the Conservatives are putting everything but the kitchen sink into making sure those two seats are victories.
So I was talking to James Manny earlier and asking, when do you think we finally get an indication of how this one plays out? Everyone's always looking, who calls it first? So he was suggesting maybe around 10:15-ish. What do you think?
I think you're going to have 8 minutes after polls close in the East. No, seriously, 7-8 minutes max. You're going to have an indication of who is going to have government. And then it'll take maybe 15 to determine majority or minority. Because, again, right now, and while it has tightened up a bit, Heron, Quebec and Ontario, and especially Ontario, seem firmly in the Liberals' column.
Okay, so that would make a short night for everybody who's expected this will last until 2
Well,
a.m.
I mean, what's going to be interesting, well, it really is. It's because I know we're focusing on Quebec, and yes, it looks like it's going to be a big night for the Liberals in Quebec, again, if everything holds. But the bigger story is Ontario. Again, Aaron, I've said this before, but think about this. 2 weeks before the federal campaign began, there was an election in Ontario, and Doug Ford won a resounding third majority. And you would think, right, if we were like 20, 30 years ago, Big Blue Machine and the Ontario Conservatives and the federal Conservatives were basically the same thing, or at least walking hand in hand, Doug Ford did not do one single event with Pierre Poilievre. Doug Ford and his key minister, aside from Caroline Mulroney, nobody of note did anything to promote Pierre Poilievre or the Conservatives in Ontario. And while the story here in Quebec and the apparent cratering of the Bloc is something to look at, the massive resurgence of the Liberals in Ontario is the bigger story. And as you know, neither the Conservatives or the Liberals can form a government without winning Ontario big. So for me, that's huge. That's the big story for me.
So let me ask you this, then, and we'll wrap up. What would be the biggest surprise for you tonight if it happened?
The biggest, well, obviously, somehow, a conservative minority government would be, for me, jaw-dropping. It would be something that this would mean that Messieurs Nanos, Léger, and company would have some serious explaining to do tomorrow morning. But the surprise also to me is if the Bloc is able to match it in percentage the support for independence. If they're able to even get to 30% support, I will be very, very surprised. But we'll see. Because again, if turnout isn't there, the Liberals could falter a bit, but again, that would be very, very surprising to me. And again, remember, last election, 2021, the Conservatives actually won the popular vote across the country, and couldn't form government, wasn't even close to forming government. So even if they look if you look at the popular vote, remember there was a Main Street poll last week that had them within a point of each other, or a point and a half. That doesn't translate in a majority of seats or a seat advantage on the Liberals.
So as I hear you sort of go through that, I think to myself two things. Number one, do we think the NDP are basically wiped off the map? I saw support in the last poll at 7%.
Yeah, I again, that's the key, right? Unless unless there's something in the NDP vote, and again, it cratered in Ontario. The NDP vote cratered in Ontario during the provincial election. They were the official opposition in Ontario. They still are, but their vote went from 30% to under 20% provincially, again, 2 weeks before the federal campaign began. And so in Ontario right now, in those, big union auto manufacturing ridings that have been NDP forever, that is completely off the map. BC the same. Jagmeet Singh's seat is in jeopardy as well. It's not just Blanchette and Poilievre. Over in BC, the NDP, who actually has been running the province now for 2 straight elections, is 3 actually, is in jeopardy. It's a 2-way race between the Liberals and the Conservatives and it's very tight in terms of seat projections. It's 1 seat going one way or another between the Conservatives and the Liberals. So, I mean, unless the NDP voter says, I'm reassured that Poilievre will not become prime minister, and goes back home, and there's no indication of that, none. It's going to be a very, very difficult night for the NDP, and yes, right now they're in jeopardy of losing party status.
We leave it at that, David. It's going to be an interesting evening. I thank you. I appreciate the time.
It will. Always a pleasure.